Welcome back to From Pain to Gain. I'm Ivan, and this is Shamus.
Shamus.
How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm blessed. I'm blessed. God is good.
Amen. Could you do a little introduction of yourself, brother?
Well, my name is Shamus Goss. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, originally from the Bronx, New York, but I've been in Atlanta since 2002. I'm a serial entrepreneur who's kind of focused on real estate and coaching and mentoring. But I'm in Atlanta now, like I said, for 20 years. I love Atlanta. And I thank you, Ivan, for welcoming me on. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And you're in the wholesale game pretty big now, right? Is that
Yes, sir.
how could folks reach out to you and get business, do deals with you?
So you can hit me up on Instagram. It's Shamus Goss on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. Is my name all the way across. I was lucky enough to get the handle. Nobody had it. So you could just hit me up, DM me if you got deals in the Atlanta market. We're looking to buy. We're trying to take down probably 5 or 10 properties per month. So make sure you know your numbers. If you know your numbers and you got a deal, I'll take it from you.
Awesome. And I forget always to kind of encourage my guests more and more, but I've actually seen multiple of your videos and content go viral. And I love my friends. They're so humble. They don't speak about that stuff, but it's true. Like you guys are like superstars. So I just wanted to touch on that. So let's go ahead and jump right in. What living all in looks like. Shamus,
You said what living all in looks like?
Yeah. We had lunch last week and you were talking about your testimony, and I was like, this is the perfect topic for Shamus. This is amazing.
Yes. I think when you talk about living all in, it's trying to find your full potential, like the better you. I know that, on a journey, everybody, I'm a little bit older, I'm 49 years old, but I've been through a lot. I've been through the ups and the downs, and I'm always striving to try to find the better me. I used to ask my son all the time, I'm like, hey, you want to be good? He said, yeah. I was like, but why not be great? So it's definitely trying to find, your peace. And, a lot of people, what they think is once they make more money, all their problems are going to come to an end. And that's not true. Like you can make money and still feel unfulfilled. So like with me, I'm on a journey right now to find my inner peace and to just become the best version of me.
Amen to that, man. And we could go ahead and get rolling on what the outline is. So to remind everybody, the CAGE acronym is complacency, atrophy, guilt, and lastly, the escape of it all. This is kind of the procedure to move through life in a healthy way. And it's not always going to be easy. Shamus, I'm sure you could speak to that, to break through to the next level, to feel like you're closest to God like you've ever been. It's not going to be a walk in the park. It's not going to be like, la, 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 everything is fine.
At all.
There is some serious work that has to happen. And before we get started, I'm going to touch on this character from the Bible who I feel is like just on fire for doing God's bidding. And we touched on this too, but this sort of guy I heard about a few weeks ago from my wife is he came to be King Jehu in the Old Testament. And, just put your children away because what I'm about to read is pretty violent and gruesome, but he's ultimately doing the Lord's work. So in one example, King Jehu was literally going after Jezebel. She was the wife of one of the kings, and the king had been lured into all sorts of nastiness, we'll just put it simply like that, by her. And she was always like seducing other people, other men, women, all the above you could think of. It's ultimately a spirit, and this spirit could take over anybody. So King Jehu, God's work was to kill her. And in this particular verse, it was not so nice. In fact, sometimes God refers to King Jehu as too violent. Like he took it overboard, like cool it down, homie. In this one example, he approached her tower as she was putting on her makeup because she knew a guest was coming over. and she told her three eunuchs that served her, basically, throw her down. And he spoke with such authority, and they were terrified of him so much that they literally grabbed her and just threw her down, like down a tower, and she died, blood splattering all over the place. After that, he went in and drank, and then he said, "Take that cursed woman and bury her, for she was a king's daughter." First of all, there's a lot to unpack there. This dude just basically approved of murdering a woman, an evil spirit of a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and proceeded to tell them to throw her down, went and grabbed a drink like it was nothing, like this is just a regular day for me, and then was still somewhat polite and said, "Bury her, she's still kind of royalty."
Yeah. just move on.
Yeah, like this is just normal business, right? And I think this could be a place to start and talk about complacency, because
Mhm.
this guy really made a new normal for himself and how he lived his life, right? In particular,
Mhm.
in context of the Lord, he didn't really allow complacency into his life. He just kind of heard what he needed to do, moved into it, not really questioning or thinking about it.
Mhm.
Shamus, do you want to talk to that sort of belief system?
Yeah, you know it's funny to touch on his character. You know, my wife used to always tell me like, why do you say this? And I remember watching the movie The Godson, and Jesus was standing on the hill with Abraham, and they was getting ready to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and he sent two angels in. They had, I mean, and one time I went to even try to buy like a red cloak to pray in it and stuff like that. And I was like, no, that might be a little bit too much. Uh, but I said, I see myself that when God returns to come and get his people, he's not going to take me. And she was like, why would you say that? I was like, because he needs warriors. He needs people that can stay down here and guide the people, and then he may come back. So like his two main angels was in there to get Abraham's, I think his nephew and family members out, but they had to kill people along the way to do it. So it's funny that you said that, because I look at myself as like, okay, when God comes, he's like, Seamus, you got tough skin. You've been through a lot. I'm gonna leave you down here for another decade or two because you got to guide these people and help these people. But these other people, and I told my wife, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I am a warrior. I'm from the South Bronx. I've been through a lot. Uh, so to touch on the subject about not being complacency, I think that when you get to a point in your life where you're about to break through, whether that's spiritually, financially, whatever it is, I think that you hit a lot of barriers.
Hmm.
And I think in most cases, what happens with people being complacent is that they have in their mind, I call it it's a safety net. Like people think, okay, I got this job, I know I've been working here for 20 years, 30 years. I'm going to retire and get my pension and things like that. But then when something like COVID hits and your job is no longer there and the entire society shifts, now you're in a position where you can't afford to pay your bills, and you have to if you're lucky enough to catch on at an early age, that's good. But if you're a bit older, if you're in your 40s or your 50s or your 60s, it's kind of hard to start all over again in a new career. It can be done, but you're like, okay, I'm 60. Like, what am I? According to statistics, a man lives, I think, is 76 or 80. Let's say it's just 80 or 90. You got at 60 years old, you got 20 years to try to make money and restart and relaunch your life. But then what mind boggles me is when you talk to somebody and they say, well, I started working at this job when I was 20. I worked until I was 65 and 45 years. And then I was able to enjoy my life. Like at 65, 70 years old, what else can you do at that age? Like you're not hiking, you're not jumping out of planes.
Play
Your
canasta.
body is not exactly, your body is not functioning at that. Like you got to do those things at an early age. So like for me, entrepreneurship was the only way. Like I think I told you, I only had probably like 6 jobs in my entire life, and none of them last longer than 90 days. I was like, I was the worst employee.
Yeah. There's two things that come up for me when you're talking about that stuff. Number one, you were not complacent at a very young age too. You remember you shared with me that you had a family member very close to you that you
Mhm.
decided to just grab all their booze and drugs and just proceed to throw it in the toilet.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that was my mother. Before my mother passed away, she used to get upset with me because I used to come in the house and she used to try to hide her beer, and I would find the beer, pour it down the toilet, cigarettes, break them, because I knew physically what it was doing to her. Because I was the last child. I'm the youngest, so I was the last one that was at home with my mother. And my mother, she was a survivor. She was loyal. We have, I got 2 sisters and 1 brother. She had 4 kids from the same man. When she broke up, when he left her, I never seen her date another man ever in 20 some years. Like, she was loyal to him, and she was like, I'm not dating no more. That's it. So, she tried her best. She definitely, went through a lot because, my mother is white and my father is black, and they dated in the 60s, which was not good. It was not good. You still had racism flaring up in the South and areas, and in the 60s, and it might have even been the late 50s. You had a biracial couple dating, and then my mother, being white, living in the South Bronx. Like, I rarely ever seen white kids. I didn't see white kids and Asian kids and everything on a daily basis until, I was moved up to Spring Valley, New York. But yeah, since I was young, like, even, you know, and I don't know if I told you this, but in my building in the Bronx, it was 36 apartments, and the majority of them was drug spots, right? So what I would do is I would go to the door of the guys or the females that owned it and was like, listen, if you need something from the store, I can save you money, because if you leave, you could lose a customer. I'm thinking business, and I'm making $10 a day, $20 a day at 8, 9 years old. And my mother's like, where are you getting this money from? And then I would get up early because I knew the kids in school wouldn't get up early enough. And we had a bodega on the store on the block. So I would cross the street, go into the store, buy like 100, to show you my age. They had penny candies. Candy was penny. So I would buy like 200, 300 penny candies, go to school. And then during school, when school was going on, they wouldn't let you cross the street. So I knew kids at lunchtime was gonna have a sugar rush, and I was like, "Hey, I got candy. It's 5 cents though." And my mother was like, "How are you getting this money?" So I kind of grew up with that spirit, and I think what pushed me to be an entrepreneur was the fact that we didn't have a lot. Like, my crib was a drawer. Like, my mother, I slept in a dresser that she pulled out and put blankets and everything in there. That's how I slept. So we didn't have a lot. Like, clothes wise, I was always one getting made fun of. Oh, you got holes in your jeans, you got the old sneakers. So when I got to an age where I could make sense of how to make money, I was like, man, I'm just gonna hustle, go to the store, buy candy. And even when I moved with my sister to Spring Valley, New York, I was shoveling snow, got a newspaper route, and at 14 years old is when they give you, I guess, is the green card where you can work. Man, 14 on the day, I was like, I got my green card. Now I could legitimately get a paycheck from
nice.
somebody. But yeah,
I
from an
gotta
early
touch on
age, I was
that penny candy. A lot of people don't realize whether it's a house or a piece of candy, that's a 5x return. You just
exactly.
a penny to 5 pennies. That's amazing.
Exactly. So if I
Yeah.
spend $100, I'm getting 500 at 8 years old, 9 years old. We're talking
Yeah.
about in the 70s or the
Yeah.
80s.
You were
That
big
was
pimping.
thousands. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You're getting all the honeys at the playground.
Exactly.
um, so I wanted to touch on something at the beginning of your point recently. You said corporations, at the end of 65, you're not really living your life. And in the midst of building to that corporate ladder top, you're not really getting a return. Um, and I wanted to touch on that because I've seen a lot of executives like people that were like 4 or 5 levels above me when I worked at corporate, like at Turner Broadcasting. I had executives I met with on a regular basis. And what I've noticed in the last few years as mergers happened, business takeovers happened, these executives have been out of work for years. They've been
Yep.
laid off. And I just wanted to touch on that because corporations only care about you as far as they could throw you, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have a need for you, a business need. And when they're done with you, that's just it. And
You're
the
done.
likelihood of the same business, a major Fortune 50 company needing you
Mm-hmm.
at another business is pretty low, especially
Yep.
when we're facing massive industry shifts like we're seeing now. TV is going down, and I foresee in 10, 20 years, even the major trucking business is going to go down with, automated everything.
Yeah.
Even the technology sector I was working in, I feel that's going to go down drastically too, because there's only so many people you need working on a website that does just about the same thing over and over again. At some point,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be automated too. So a lot of people thinking that, oh, I'm just going to keep living this pretend American dream of working a corporate job that pays me decent, even if it's 75 to 150,000. I'm just going to keep, running up credit card bills and hoping for the best that I'll
Mm-hmm.
keep getting a promotion to offset these losses. It's not going to happen. They're just the hammer's going to come down to you some way if you don't prepare ahead of it, and that's only through investment, through education, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know,
100%.
education makes me think of something. I had this one person that, initially was my student, but when I told them, hey, if you want me to be more intimate in training you, I would just need X amount more money. And I was like, this is my time. I'm not going to just be
Mm-hmm.
spending time on everybody willy nilly. But he got offended. He thought that that wasn't fair. He feels like a lot of real estate investors, the big guys, just want to charge. But I was like, and I was initially kind of thinking, maybe I need to give him some slack. But then I was thinking, dude, my first 2 years in the investment game, I made $1.3 million net. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is the lowest amount I can charge. Like, this is ridiculous.
Exactly.
And so I just wanted to touch on that because
But it's
touches
funny.
complacency.
It's the funny what you said. Last year alone, I spent $100,000 on mentors and education.
Mm-hmm.
And my buddies was like, why would you spend that much money? I said, because they're where I want to be and they know something that I don't know. I think that's an issue with new investors and just new entrepreneurs is because I get the DMs all the time. Hey, would you coach me when you mentor me? As soon as you say, hey, book a call, the call is $500. Oh, I didn't want to do that. I just wanted you to help me out. My time is valuable. My
Yeah.
time is valuable. You can't walk in Apple and say, hey, I want the new iPhone, but $13 is a little bit too much. I'm going to, I'll get back to you on it. You have to pay. And then especially if somebody, I think that's one of the main things that will hold somebody back is when they feel like they don't have to pay for education. Now, I'm not saying spend hundreds of thousands. You got to do your due diligence, vet the people you're working with. But I mean, when somebody I know for the coaches that I hire, my minimum is $25,000 to $50,000 for a 6-month coaching program.
Mm-hmm.
So when I tell people that, they're like, oh, I would never pay that. I'm like, that's why you continue to make the same amount of money you make and you work in the same job and you're always complaining about you don't make enough money. That's why.
Which brings us naturally to atrophy. When you're used to this normal of not pushing yourself, not going to the next bar. I remember having lunch with another friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and he said towards the end, maybe we should switch the topics a little bit. We touched a lot of heavy stuff, and I was thinking, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but how many more millions of people have that sort of thinking, right? That I'm just going to live my life day to day, not having heavy conversations. I'm going to actively avoid them because they're uncomfortable to me. And that, I think, is probably a good majority of us, in the United States, that don't want to have those tough conversations, don't want to confront the hammer that's coming down at them, whether financially, emotionally, all of the above. What's your thoughts on that, Shamus?
I think that as a family leader, whether it's a male or a female, is your obligation to change the trajectory for your family. You know, we talked about that. I think in every family you have what's called the one. It's the one person that everybody thought was crazy that went totally against the grain and they broke through. I think that it's selfish for you to be an intelligent individual and don't realize that you have to make way for your kids and your grandkids and your great great grandkids. So and that, like I said, that's most of America. That's why I don't know the exact number, but I think 80% or 85% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck and have less than $1,000 in their bank account. If something happens to you, you don't have nothing to pass on to your kids. Like you don't even have life insurance to get them out of, and a lot of time debt gets passed on to the kids or to the wife. I think that you have to try to figure out how to change it, because all it takes is that one person in your family that breaks the curse, becomes a millionaire, and then you in your family, you then have that person like, oh, this is my uncle. He's a successful businessman. He's into real estate. If you're smart, you're gonna say, hey, Uncle Ivan, what do you do for a living? Can you show me what you do? I see you driving nice cars and you own real estate. I don't want to work at whatever job I have. So I think it's a mentality where they, like you said, they go on doing the same thing over and over again, and they think that, hopefully, the company is going to give them a break and they're going to get a severance package. In most cases, when you get to the 50s or 60s, and let's say the cap for your position is 100 grand, and you get this college kid that comes in with more energy, they're going to start him at 50K and they're going to cut you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do. Like they don't sit there. And I mean, all companies ain't like that. Some companies you can retire with, but for the most part, the hammer's gonna come down on you, and then you're stuck with enough money to pay bills for a year or two, and now you got to create an entirely new career. And I think COVID showed people that, because even with my previous company, which was uniforms, we did it for 16 years, took it to 7 figures. I was like, this is a recession-proof business. No matter what happens in society, little Bobby is going to get his football paid for, or basketball. And when COVID hit, everything stopped. And I was like, wow, like that made me change the way I thought about making money. Like I got into the mindset where I have to make money from my cell phone or my laptop. I have to be able to operate my company from these two items. That one, I could travel anywhere in the country. Like when me and my wife, I told you, we took a 42-day vacation. All I had to do was open my laptop, answer some emails, send out some documents, and do whatever I had to do. But I continued, I could close it and then hop on the boat or whatever like that. I think that you have to get comfortable with becoming uncomfortable, because
Mm-hmm.
on the other side of, your comfort zone is everything that you desire.
Yeah. Is there a time where that maybe it was that shirt business in the pandemic, but is there a time when you decided or you realized you were in a period of atrophy in your life, and what did you do to get out of it?
So basically, it's funny that you say that's a great question. We ran the uniform company for 16 years. We ran it for 16 years. And the last year or two that we had the company, I didn't even want to go in. Like I would tell my wife, you get up and you go, I don't want to go no more, because I was a creative person and I felt like I wasn't using my creativity. And I think when you're a creative person and you don't use it, it leads to insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you got all these ideas going on. And as entrepreneurs, we get a new idea every day. Oh, I can
Yeah.
sell water. I can sell this. I can sell that.
Yeah.
It happens every day. So when I got to that point, and how I knew that I was there, I really stopped caring about customer service. Like I was giving people $50,000 checks back. I'm like, take your money back. I don't want your business.
Mm.
That's not good. When somebody comes in to spend 50K and you're at a 50% profit margin, you're like, you could take your money back. Right. That at that point, I knew, I'm like, this is it. I can't do it no more. And to be honest, I don't know what it was that really clicked for me. I literally came in one day and told my wife we're closing. She was like, what? I was like, we're shutting the company down. I didn't tell nobody. I'm like, I just can't do this no more. And literally that week we closed the company down. We closed the doors, we cut the phones off, everything. I think what some people get caught up in is you can be an entrepreneur and then you can be a CEO. You can be an entrepreneur with just an expensive job, right? Where you're working 80, for instance, you know, we had took 7 years, 8 years when we didn't even take a vacation, and we're doing 80-hour weeks,
Oh
100-hour
my
weeks,
gosh.
and we didn't take a vacation. So I think, you know, to become a CEO is where you literally can step away from your company and the company operates without you. If you don't have a company where you can leave for a month or two and your company operates, you don't have a business, you have a hobby or an expensive job. And I feel like, you know, in the grace of for the grace of God, we were able to pay our bills and feed our family for that period of time. But my conversations I would have with God was like, you put me here to change the legacy. That's what you put me here for. So I have to figure it out, you know, and we literally just closed the company down. And what was funny is that was in 2016. From 2016 to 2018, those were probably two of my lowest years in my life because I felt, you know, I left my family down. And I'm talking about we had townhomes, houses, jet skis, brand new cars, and we lost it all. It
Mm,
was like back to, you know, nothing.
mm,
So I was humbled by that, but I feel like in those 2 years, it was two of the years that I felt I got closer to God. That was the first time I actually opened up a book. And the first book I read was the 4 Hour Work Week with Tim Ferriss. And I'm like, this guy's making fun of me. I'm like, because everything he said he was going to do in the book exactly is what happened to me. And then I
mm,
realized from 17 to 44, I never read a book.
mm.
I just basically grind mode. I'm like, man, I know how to make cash. You put me anywhere, I'll sell water to a whale. It doesn't make a difference, you know. And I really just, I wasn't educating myself. And when I started reading books, I realized that, you know, when you read books, especially if you read business books and personal development, these are books that successful entrepreneurs put all of their gems in, and you literally can go through it in 8 hours and pick up one thing, just one thing, you know.
I'll
So
take it to the
4 Hour
next
Work
level.
Week, and then, you know, traction. So I think reading is what kind of pulled me out of that mindset. But when I shut the company down, I definitely went into a depression mode. It was like, this is it. I got to get a job. I said I was never going to do this. And so I don't, to answer your question, I don't really know what it was that pulled me out other than God saying it's time for you to move on. And they say you're not supposed to wish nothing away, but I wish that company away. And when we closed down, I was like, well, you know, we're doing $1 million a year. We could close down, work from the home. We'll still do 300 or 400,000 and make 100 grand. We did 50,000 the next year. Like nobody would call us back. It was like we disappeared off the earth, face of the
Mm,
earth.
mm-hmm.
So that was God's way of saying, hey, let me crumble this, because if I don't crumble this and I don't bring this down, you're never going to reroute and get on another path. You're going to be complacent and you're going to stay on that journey, which is not the journey I want you on, you know?
Yeah. But let me give you an alley oop to the answer because it's the next part of the outline. It's guilt.
Okay.
And everything you just described, dude. You grieved the business. You felt bad about customers. You didn't want to take on customers. You allowed that emotional state to healthily work through instead of just pushing
Mhm.
those emotions down and working
Yeah.
those hours more and more. But what I think was also towards the end of that, you mentioned in your lunch, which was pretty powerful, was there came a point to where you did work through those emotions and wanted to start multiple businesses again, but you said that God specifically said, "Stop."
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what did He tell you next?
So this was no October of November of 2021. And I was in a, you know, in a good financial position. You know, I was like, we was going to get an 18-wheeler truck. We was going to relaunch the uniform company. We had 2 private label brands. I was just like, you know what? It's time to diversify. Let me open up 4 or 5 different things. And I'm sitting in my home office and I get up and I hear God say, 2 years ago, you asked me to be in a certain financial position that you are now in for real estate, and you're doing everything other than real estate. I literally continued my steps into the bedroom, told my wife, hey, the trucks, the store, everything else has to be on hold. God wants me to do the real estate and I need 6 months. And I literally went on Instagram, reached out to my guys, Carlos and Sal and Alex and them, that's part of All in Arizona. And they was doing an event called Momentum, which, to backtrack a little, their first event, Freedom, I went to was in 2019. That's when I really understood, and because they broke everything down when it came to wholesaling. And I'm a KPI guy. Like, I need details. I see stuff like the Matrix. Like, show me numbers. How many leads to get how many deals? What does this cost? And I didn't even go VIP and nothing. I was like, I barely could afford the ticket. I actually used my rent money to get out there because I remember trying to negotiate using my negotiation skills with the lady at the counter to get some type of AAA discount or something. And then Momentum was the next step up. It was more expensive. And I called them. They was like, they're having it. I bought a ticket. I went there and I bought into their mentorship. Right. But it was, and it's funny is when I was leaving the hotel, when I was leaving their office, I learned that, I got God on the left shoulder and the devil on the right shoulder. I need to know whose voices are what. Mm-hmm. And I hear, you're not going to spend all this money on mentorship. You can't afford it. It's not worth it. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Okay, I can't spend this amount of money on mentorship and everything. And as soon as Carlos got up and started talking about the mentorship, I was the first one. I'm like, I'm in, right? And I tell the story and exactly like that, everybody laughs. But I was like, I realized that it was the devil telling me don't do it because that was going to push me to the next level. And God was like, do it. You have the money, do it. You're here. You asked to be here, almost 2.5 years ago, and you're in this position. Even now, I got a call from a big data provider yesterday, and they want me to help them with data and skip tracing and build like a private brand and everything for me and everything. And they was like, man, we watched you on Instagram, like you grew, and we seen you grow over these years. And some of the things that I'm involved with now are things that I seen 3 or 4 years ago. I was like, man, I wish I was in this position. I wish these was my friends. I wish I could get into this mentorship and this mastermind, and I'm there now. Mm-hmm. So, it's definitely a transformation.
You are in one of those events, you were in a meeting with a lot of heavy hitters, and you were actually praying for that, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. It's a buddy of mine posted a picture about 2.5 years ago, and it was a mastermind. And I remember looking at the picture, I'm like, man, I need to get to know these guys. These need to be my friends. And fast forward 3 months ago, I was out in San Diego, and they was like, hey, come on over. And the guys was there. And as I come in, they're like, hey, Shamus, we know we follow you on Instagram and everything. And I was like, wow. But just to be in that room, I was just in the moment because I just seen it years prior. I was like, I need to get in the room with these guys. And you're there now. So that definitely, and they was talking astronomical numbers that I don't even want to mention, you know what I'm saying? But they was talking big numbers, and I'm like, is that even a number? But just to see it.
Yeah,
exactly. But what I realized is that God put me in that room because that's where I was supposed to be and develop those relationships.
Yeah. And to be in that room and make those conversations normal produces in you a almost subconscious gap to be like, oh, yeah, this is something, a gap I need to close. What's the things I need to close? There's a rap lyric that makes me think of that. I can't remember who the artist is, but it says something like, all of a sudden, when I started making millions, I started to become good at math. Things just connect automatically.
Exactly.
One even starts to become more of an accountant by nature when you earn those sorts of dollars. But there's something else I wanted to touch on, and to speak to that on my experience. So the first time I had kind of multi-million-dollar conversations was actually when I just invested about 30 grand into a warehouse, 3 warehouse specifically, adding bathrooms to them. I was a part of that. It was not anything close to the end result of when they sold it, but I was kind of a small partner in the renovation of it. And I realized, even though the typical person wouldn't invest in that because you're not directly an owner, you're kind of more doing a loan, it's kind of short-term investment return on it. Mm-hmm. What I realized was I'm building a relationship, I'm building experience. Who else in the commercial sector that has 3 warehouses is going to allow me to manage a project of such scale? You
Yep.
know, a venue that brings in concerts where P Diddy is coming in on a regular basis to hold to reserve that space for concerts and all sorts of things like that. Like I look at things not just in terms of a financial return, but also what's the relationship return, right? And
100%.
yeah, and that also made me think of why I jumped into improv, but that's another topic entirely.
Yeah.
But I got
No, I
emotional return.
totally agree. I totally agree. A lot of times there's things that I did that I wasn't going to make the money I wanted to make off of it, but it put me in a room. It put me to develop a relationship to do more business later on in life.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree 100%.
Cool, man. Well, we got through the guilt part, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and move on to escape. How do you escape
Mm-hmm.
not living all in?
You said, how do I escape?
Not is there times where you didn't want to be all in, but you kind of just wanted to? I guess procedurally, we had to work through the first 3 steps to get to wanting to escape. One example of that, I guess, in your life would be you didn't want to live in that bed growing up. You didn't want to have the old shoes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was kind of your motivator. But what procedurally kind of what did it look like towards the end of that in your childhood?
I think it be, in the beginning it was definitely, I don't want to live here. I want to live better. I want to have better things, nicer cars and nicer houses. And then I think what wound up happening to me when I got older was I realized that it was my duty to change everything for everybody in my family, not just my kids, my sisters, my brothers, their kids and their kids. So I think it became more, in the beginning it was me. Yeah, I just want new shoes. I want new sneakers. I want to have the freshest kicks. And then it became, well, how do I get my family to understand how money works, how to invest money, and how to break that cycle. So I think it was really definitely, knowing that my wife counted on me, knowing that my kids count on me. I think that's what kind of pushed it was, I feel like I had this moral obligation to, like I said, to change the trajectory for everybody in my family, not just my immediate kids, like their kids and their kids.
Was there a connection to that? Remember you told me something like your friend visited where you lived and he saw a dead body and you said that was normal to
Yeah,
you?
yeah. A buddy of mine, Reggie, he was getting into some trouble in upstate New York, and he was like, "Hey, let me come stay with you." So he comes stays with me for like a week, and in that week, the first 3 days, 2 people got murdered on my block, and he was like, "I'm going back home." He was like, "This is not normal."
Yeah.
For me, it was normal. I think I seen my first body. I seen somebody get killed when I was about like 8 years old, 9 years old. I remember me and my best friend Anthony. He passed away. I remember running in the building and there's blood on the floor and everything. We were like, wow, he got shot. I mean, we seen that at like 8 or 9 years old. And I was talking to my buddy the other day. He was like, bro, that's not normal. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, but I feel like, that's how I grew up. And, coming from New York and it could be every city and every state has these areas where like it's survival of the fittest. Like you can make one move and, lose your life.
Yeah. That's
But yeah, he,
powerful,
he was like,
man. That's
he said, I'm going
crazy.
home. I'm going home. He's like, I can't stay here. I was like, all right.
Did you ever get to hang out with Mob Deep?
No, I performed one time and they was performing there up in
No
Spring Valley,
way.
New York. Yeah, Prodigy and yeah, Mob Deep.
You
Cause I
performed. What?
knew, huh?
You performed?
Yeah, cause I was in the music industry for like 10 years. I had records on Billboard and everything. You could look it up. Shamus, Big Willie Style. That's before Will Smith took it. We talk about 1992.
Get
I
out of
actually
here.
posted a video. Yeah, I posted a
How did
video
we
the other
not
day.
touch on this? I
I was
would
in the
have.
music industry for like 10 years, from like 1992 to like 2002. And then I kind of walked away from it because I was tired of how the music industry was being ran and artists wasn't getting paid. And I wanted to start, my own distribution company to give artists their rights. So
Oh,
that's a whole other story.
okay. So what motivates me to not uh, be against all in living is I think it largely talks to my childhood. I was a adult pretty early on. I would say by the age of 10 to 12, I had to be an
Mhm.
adult for the household because there was a lot of things just always just exploding, a lot of yelling, there's a lot of addiction in the household. And so I had to be the guy that was, I call it turning on robot mode, Ivan, where you just, I could walk into a nuclear power plant that's about to explode and be like, everybody, everything's fine. Just let's just move through the steps to get it all handled. I got trained in that very early on. And that has embedded in me, get ahead of issues as best as you can, as fast as you can.
Yep. Mhm.
And you could connect to this too. It's pretty hard to trust people, even it's harder to trust people even closer to you.
Yep.
I've been
100%. Yeah.
working through that a lot in the last few years.
Yeah.
But what that
But what's
produces,
crazy about what you're saying is what's super hard is, especially with family, is they just don't get it. They just
mm,
don't get it. Like you have to literally become that person. Like I'm worth 100 million now. Do you believe me? But they
mm,
seen you through the whole journey, but they're just like, nah, it's not gonna happen. Then when you start making the money, you're like, oh well, maybe he was on to something. So I agree. It's hard. It's hard with family.
yeah. And this is also another connection point that we're both working on together. We're blind to certain things, and the only way to get ahead of that is to surround ourselves with people that are not blind, that can see the things, that can also have the courage to call things out.
Hmm.
I'll be honest, there's a lot of things that Stacy brought up that were bad habits of mine in terms of just living out in the public that
Hmm.
I couldn't even see for myself. And I'm certain now that I look back at it, previous girlfriends saw it, but they didn't have the
Yeah.
courage to just outright and say, "Hey,
Mhm.
that's not cool." And
Yeah.
as a matter of
Exactly.
fact, that's bad for your business. That's bad for our relationship. That should stop. And that wrestling, that overcoming that blindness of what the subconscious
Hmm.
is doing from our childhood, from whatever truths that we've embedded in our souls, that seeing those allows us to escape into something greater.
Yeah.
And looks like we just have 3 minutes left before your next meeting. So let's jump right
Mhm.
into like a little summary here. Seamus, what do you want to end your ending statements on?
Well, everybody listening, one, I appreciate you listening, Ivan. I appreciate you having me on. I think for anybody that's trying to become an entrepreneur, whether you're currently one or not, that you find something that drives you to push past and break limits that nobody else in your family did. I really believe that every family has the one. It's that one person that does that. Live with faith, because my buddy told me the other day, my risk tolerance level is at like 100%. Like I'll go bankrupt and live in my car again if I believe in it. I go all in on everything. Any business I had, I always went all in. So definitely, push yourself, but also take the time to self heal. To, like you said, we talk about childhood, things that we grew up with, and we really don't understand, like you said, until somebody points it out to you, like that's not normal. Like you doing that or you acting like that, that's not normal. So try to find, whatever path it is that's going to get you to where you need to be, and take that time to like heal yourself, but definitely go all in, shoot for the moon. I don't say the stars, shoot for the moon, and I mean, just realize that, people are counting on you.
Yeah. And to wrap up, all in is not something that you could necessarily always take to entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
I want to say when I was younger and my first real job was McDonald's, I worked all the jobs. I was all in on McDonald's. And I did that for a
Exactly.
year. I didn't halfway do my job. I'll just be profane. I wasn't half-assed in my job. I think
Hmm.
that's repulsive now that I know the Lord well, to do your job
Hmm.
half-assed. People, you're expecting to serve people, and you should do that. And I think that's what makes an
Exactly.
entrepreneur great. That's great, even greater, if they understand servitude. If you
Hmm.
don't understand what it is to be on the bottom rung, how are you going to serve the top and the top wrong. So I'll just
Yep.
end on that note. I want to be respectful of your time, Shamus / Big
Appreciate
Willie.
it,
Awesome name. I'm gonna look that up right now. And thanks again. Have a
Gotcha.
blessed day, bro.
You too, bro. Thank you, man.